February 18, 1991. In the midst of the Gulf War, the U.S.-led coalition fleet roams the perilous waters of the northern Persian Gulf in preparation for landing troops on Kuwait's beaches to fight off the invading Iraqi forces. Leading the way is USS Tripoli, a veteran amphibious assault ship of the Vietnam War, who now finds herself as the flagship for airborne mine countermeasures operations, tasked with clearing a safe path for her fellow vessels in the lead-up to the attack. Shattering the pre-dawn stillness with the low thrumming of her engines, Tripoli cuts through the dark waters on her vital mission. Suddenly, as the clock hits 4:36 a.m., a violent tremor rocks the vessel from stem to stern. Alarms blare as confused and frightened sailors scramble for battle stations. Damage reports flood in, and the grim reality becomes clear. Tripoli has struck a mine. As Tripoli desperately fights to stay afloat, just a few miles away, the state-of-the-art Aegis cruiser USS Princeton prowls the same waters, daringly close to the Kuwaiti coast. Receiving the news of Tripoli's plight, Captain Edward Hunts comes to a grim realization. Princeton, too, is likely sitting in the middle of a minefield. Trying to keep as calm as he can, he orders his helmsman to proceed with utmost caution. But in these treacherous waters, where danger lurks beneath every wave, Hunts wonders if caution will be enough to keep Princeton safe. Named after the decisive victory by the United States against the Barbary state of Tripoli at the Battle of Dema in 1805, USS Tripoli was an Iwo Jima-class amphibious assault ship commissioned in 1966. At 602 feet long and displacing over 18,000 tons, Tripoli was a formidable vessel designed to launch amphibious operations using helicopters and landing craft. She had seen extensive service during the Vietnam War, participating in numerous operations over 3 tours between 1967 and 1973, spending the years that followed traversing the Pacific and Indian Oceans. In contrast, USS Princeton was one of the Navy's newest and most advanced warships. A Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser commissioned in 1989, Princeton boasted a sophisticated Aegis combat system, capable of tracking and engaging multiple air and surface threats simultaneously. In 1990, she served as the flagship for the U.S. Navy's first visit to the Soviet Union's Pacific port of Vladivostok since before World War II. However, Princeton's tour would unexpectedly be cut short as she was urgently needed elsewhere. On August 2, 1990, Iraqi forces under dictator Saddam Hussein invaded neighboring Kuwait, attempting to assert dominance over the region. The United States feared that Iraq's next target for expansionism would be key U.S. ally Saudi Arabia. So, along with an international coalition of 35 nations, it swiftly launched Operation Desert Shield to contain further Iraqi aggression. However, as diplomacy failed to resolve the crisis, the coalition began steadily building up forces in the Persian Gulf in preparation for the second phase of its plan, known as Operation Desert Storm, which would aim to push the Iraqis out of Kuwait altogether. On December 1st, the U.S. Navy sent 100 ships to the Persian Gulf. Among them was USS Tripoli, ready to return to combat operations for the first time since the Vietnam War. This time, she would be the flagship for airborne mine countermeasures operations. Meanwhile, USS Princeton was recalled to Long Beach Naval Station before leaving on her first combat deployment on December 7th, tasked with providing air defense for the amphibious task force assembling off the Kuwaiti coast. Operation Desert Storm kicked off on January 17, 1991. Allied forces launched an extensive aerial assault, targeting key Iraqi military installations and infrastructure. As the air war raged, Tripoli and Princeton, along with other coalition naval forces in the Persian Gulf, readied themselves for their roles in the coming ground offensive. At 4:36 a.m. on February 18th, USS Tripoli was rocked by a massive explosion on her starboard bow as an LUGM-145 influence mine, likely laid by Iraqi forces, detonated just below the waterline. Having been jolted awake by the blast, Captain Bruce McEwen quickly ordered the crew to battle stations as the vessel went to general quarters. Miraculously, nobody was hurt, but for Tripoli herself, it soon became clear that the situation was dire. The mine had torn a massive 16 by 20 foot hole in the ship's hull, and now seawater was rapidly flooding into multiple compartments, including a diesel room, a pump room, and a dry storage locker on 3 different decks. The ship's damage control team sprang into action. Their report suggested that burst fire suppression pipes were contributing to the influx of seawater. The flooding didn't stop there. Water had also begun seeping into 2 additional compartments. Alarmingly, one of these was an ammunition storage area, raising concerns about the stability of the ship's explosive ordnance. If Tripoli were to have any hope of staying afloat, her crew would have to work fast. Determined to prevent further flooding, they began working feverishly to shore up the damaged hull and pump out the incoming water. For several tense hours, Tripoli lay motionless in the Gulf waters, her crew anxiously contemplating their predicament. But there was a good chance their ordeal had only just begun. The executive officer grimly informed them that intelligence suggested at least 6 mines lurked beneath the waves just ahead. 3 of these devices had already been pinpointed and tagged with smoke markers, awaiting the arrival of specialized underwater demolition teams from a nearby carrier. Above the stricken vessel, a constant buzz of activity filled the air, as British and American helicopters, launched from neighboring ships, conducted relentless sweeps of the surrounding area. Their vigilant crews identified another half-dozen potential mines, each carefully marked with smoke to guide further investigation. The race to secure a safe passage for Tripoli continued unabated, both above and below the waterline. As news of Tripoli's encounter with the mine spread through the fleet, tension mounted on the bridges of nearby ships. Among them was USS Princeton, whose captain, Edward Hans, had positioned his ship closer to the Kuwaiti coast, 28 nautical miles off Failaka Island, to provide optimal air defense coverage. If Tripoli had struck a mine a whole 10 nautical miles further out to sea, it seemed worryingly likely that the coastal area was also teeming with underwater explosives. At 7:15 a.m., just as Captain Hans finished warning his crew about the danger of mines over the ship's intercom, disaster struck. 2 Italian-made MN-103 Manta bottom-mounted influence mines detonated in quick succession, one just under Princeton's port rudder and another off her starboard bow. The force of the explosions lifted Princeton's stern out of the water, creating a whiplash effect that sent shockwaves through the entire ship. On the bridge, crew members struggled to maintain their footing as the ship bucked and swayed violently. Captain Hans later recalled, quote, "We were doing some pretty healthy knee bends as the ship moved up and down perhaps 4 to 6 feet. After cycles of moving up and down, we started moving sideways." Just as with Tripoli, the mine strikes had caused severe damage. Princeton's hull was cracked and buckled in multiple places. Her port rudder was jammed at 30 degrees right, and her starboard propeller shaft was damaged. In the chaos, 3 crew members suffered injuries, with one sailor on the forecastle being thrown 10 feet into the air by the force of the blast. What's more, several pipes inside the ship had burst. Soon, Princeton's crew realized they would need to shut down her air conditioning system. As the ship's air defense radars required air conditioning in order to keep cool enough to function, this meant that she was left without the use of her missile systems, essentially rendering her a sitting duck for any potential attackers. As both Tripoli and Princeton fought to survive and struggled to maintain stability, the true extent of the minefield became apparent. With 2 valuable assets damaged and vulnerable in hostile water, the threat of further mine strikes loomed large, and there was always the possibility of an Iraqi missile attack, taking advantage of their vulnerable state. Both crippled vessels now faced a frantic race against time. On Tripoli, damage control efforts continued as officers continued to discover the true extent of the damage. Clad in protective breathing gear and flame-resistant headgear, damage control teams navigated the treacherous, mine-ravaged sections of the ship as pumps worked tirelessly to expel the invading seawater. Meanwhile, powerful ventilation fans labored to disperse the noxious cocktail of paint and solvent vapors that had accumulated in the lower decks. After a grueling 7-hour struggle, Tripoli's crew managed to restore partial power to the beleaguered ship. They continued working tirelessly for 13 more hours until, against all odds, she was fully stabilized and ready to resume operations. However, fate had dealt them a cruel hand. The mine's destructive force had ruptured the JP-5 fuel reserves. This crippling blow left Tripoli's fleet of MH-53E Sea Dragons, her primary minesweeping assets, grounded and impotent. The ship may have been eager to return to the fray, but without the means to launch her helicopters, she remained a toothless tiger. Meanwhile, on Princeton, the situation was even more precarious. With her propulsion severely compromised, she was at the mercy of the currents in the middle of a minefield. Captain Hans and his crew worked relentlessly to restore what systems they could. In a testament to her skill and the ship's advanced design, Princeton had her Aegis combat system back online within 15 minutes of the mine strike. Yet Princeton was still in desperate need of assistance. Fortunately, Hans knew exactly which ship could provide it. Though not originally assigned to the area, the Canadian destroyer HMCS Athabaskan possessed a unique capability. She could simultaneously operate 2 large CH-124 Sea King helicopters, making her invaluable for extended minesweeping operations. Responding to Hans's call, Athabaskan's crew demonstrated remarkable courage. They skillfully navigated the treacherous minefield to deliver vital damage control supplies to the severely damaged Princeton. Despite the constant danger, Princeton maintained her position for 31 grueling hours until relief arrived. In an unexpected gesture of camaraderie, Athabaskan's crew also transferred several cases of beer to Princeton, a welcome treat for the American sailors, given that U.S. Navy vessels were officially dry. This small act of kindness provided a brief moment of normalcy amidst the tense situation. Incredibly, throughout the ordeal, Princeton continued to perform her duties as local anti-air warfare commander, providing a protective umbrella for the amphibious task force. This was a remarkable feat, given the damage she had sustained. However, if Princeton were to escape the minefield safely, she would require further assistance. Soon, the help she badly needed would arrive, in the form of the salvage ship USS Beaufort and the minesweeper USS Adroit. Adroit, a wooden-hulled minesweeper that many considered obsolete in the age of Aegis cruisers, now found herself thrust into a critical role as she took on the mission of clearing a safe path for Beaufort to reach Princeton and tow her to safety. As night fell on February 18th, Adroit began the painstaking process of sweeping for mines, marking safe channels with flares. When the flares ran out, the resourceful crew resorted to using chemical light sticks tied together to continue marking the path. Lieutenant Commander William Barnes, Adroit's commanding officer, guided his ship through the treacherous waters with steely nerves and expert skill. Behind Adroit came Beaufort, carefully maneuvering to avoid the marked mines while towing the stricken Princeton. The journey out of the minefield was a nerve-wracking experience for all involved. Every ping on Adroit's sonar could represent another mine, another potential disaster. Yet slowly but surely, the small convoy made progress. As dawn broke on February 19th, Princeton, Beaufort, and Adroit finally cleared the minefield. Princeton was then towed to Bahrain for initial repairs before being moved to a dry dock in Dubai for more extensive work. The damage was considered serious enough to warrant her return to the United States 8 weeks later. Tripoli, on the other hand, managed to stay on station for a remarkable 7 days despite heavy flooding. This persistence allowed her to continue supporting mine-clearing operations, a crucial task given the events unfolding around her. She then sailed to Jubail on the eastern coast of Saudi Arabia to allow her helicopters to transfer to USS New Orleans before heading to the Arab Shipbuilding and Repair Yard Company in Bahrain. Following a month of intensive emergency repairs, Tripoli made her defiant return to the Persian Gulf. Despite her recent ordeal, the resilient vessel took point in the United Nations' efforts to neutralize the extensive minefields that Iraq had sown across the region's waters. The mine incidents involving Tripoli and Princeton had a significant impact on naval operations during Desert Storm. The threat posed by Iraq's extensive minefields, even to the most advanced warships, became starkly apparent, leading to increased emphasis on mine countermeasures. The incident also underscored the importance of seemingly outdated assets like the minesweeper Adroit, which played a crucial role in rescuing a billion-dollar cruiser. For their actions during and after the mine strikes, the crews of Tripoli and Princeton were awarded the Combat Action Ribbon. The Navy also accelerated the development of improved mine detection and clearance capabilities in the wake of these events. After the fighting stopped in the Gulf on February 28, 1991, Tripoli continued to serve. Notably, she conducted the first landing of ground forces in support of Operation Restore Hope in Somalia in 1992. She was decommissioned in 1995, but in an interesting twist of fate, she found a second life as a launch platform for ballistic missile defense tests before finally being scrapped in 2018, 52 years after her construction had been completed. Having survived her baptism of fire as the most damaged ship of the Gulf War, Princeton remains in active service with the U.S. Navy to this day. Notably, in September 2010, she was involved in recovering hostages from the pirated MV Magellan Star in the Gulf of Aden. The mine incidents involving Tripoli and Princeton stand as a testament to the bravery and skill of U.S. Navy personnel, the unpredictable nature of naval warfare, and the ever-present dangers that lurk beneath the dark seas.